I sense the polarization bothers me. This idea that, you know, we start to indict each other. I mean, we can do that. And we can kind of say, well, here's the problem, and we can name names and people and certain situations. And as much as we can sit here and kind of do that, they can kind of do the same thing. I think that what Senator Dibble said is what I'm more worried about, is that one of the things that we say as Democrats in the legislature is that the Republican stance on taxes raises property tax. One of the things that they say is, no, you don't have to raise property tax, you just have to manage your budget better, right? That's what I'm just telling you what they say. So what I think that we have to be cognizant of is how do we figure out how to work through these issues and at the same time not get to a point in which the Republicans who don't want to raise income tax progressively, and then when we say, well, you're going to raise property tax, they say no, that there's property tax sitting there for your amenities, your neighborhoods and things of that nature. They don't understand kind of the value, and nor do they really want to look to figure that out. So I just kind of want to put that on the backdrop as a new member to the legislature, being my second time being elected, what I've heard over and over again and what that message is. I will also say that I think that the last minute Ways and Means markup proposal on something as monumental as this is appalling. That we should have a conversation, that everybody here has the capacity and others within our community to really start to understand what are the issues that we're facing. And to do it in the 11th hour is appalling, and there is somewhat of a track record of that. So many might remember last year, Representative Champion and I came down to City Council when there was some movement on the Civil Rights Department and what they wanted to do in markup last year at the end of the year. So I think that we have to work on that issue. That being said, I will also say, and I'm not saying it because Elizabeth is here, Elizabeth did call, and as chair of the IGR and as one of the co-chairs of the House Minneapolis delegation, she did call. Councilmember Schiff, and I wish he was here, he did call as well. So folks have kind of called, but the last minute nature of it has not really allowed us to really kind of have this kind of conversation that we should be having. And so ultimately, we just choose a side. And so, but what I have heard when I've called staff in others' offices as I've tried to figure out what was going on, is they said that there also is a lot of our neighbors are calling about the property tax hike. And often the same folks that are calling about the property tax hike are often saying, but don't mess around with my neighborhood organization's money and what we need to do in our community. And so I just want to acknowledge that. Let me put out, because I want you to know where I'm going. I don't support this proposal. I don't support the inequities. I don't support the last minute nature of it. I don't support that we aren't fully, we haven't fully vetted these proposals, that it's very fluid. What I've heard on Wednesday was different than what happened on Friday, which may be different what happens on Monday. And then out of that, we have to figure out what the legislative kind of session looks like and what their budget is going to look like and what the governor's budget. There's a whole bunch of stuff that we have to look at, and I think that it is extremely disrespectful to kind of throw in the middle of the night kind of a proposal that fundamentally changes how we've lived our life in these communities for the last 20 years. And so I think that that is important. And so with that being said, I think a call to action is necessary, but I also think that as we kind of call to action, all of us don't get caught in this situation and where we look irresponsible because all we care about is this. And there's all these other issues that we have to talk about. So what happens as we start to move forward and LGA gets zeroed out and we have to figure out how to deal with our first responders, right? How do we deal with that message? How do you guys deal with that? How do we work together to make sure that we can accomplish both of those goals? The other thing, and I venture and I tip my toe in this a little bit, especially as I look to the young lady that has come from Harrison and we look at these maps, we have to also kind of look at what was the natural development of these plans and then kind of what happened along the way that some neighborhoods were able to spend their money, some neighborhoods weren't, and how do we kind of figure out kind of how do we deal with that? Because part of the issue, I know that I was doing a phase 2 plan in Powderhorn, I don't know, '01 or '02 or something like, maybe '02 or '03, right? And so that, and a lot of things have happened in between legislatively, also neighborhoods falling apart, reforming. And so let's make sure that we start to understand kind of how does that happen, what's the best possible use for the money, and frankly, and I know we have these now 2 neighborhood organizations and the inefficiencies there, but how do we support neighborhoods to make sure that they get on track and those dollars go to the folks that need them the most, right? And how do we do that now? And why do we have so much money that has been allocated but hasn't been used? And when you look at that, they are distressed neighborhoods that have had that. So the neighborhoods that need the money the most are the ones that are slowest to get the money. So I just want to say that in that instance, and I'm not trying to blame anybody, but I just want to kind of make sure that we understand the full context of what we're talking about. The last thing that I will say is look around the room, right? And how do we organize, and how are we intentionally organized? Because as we come forward to say, here are some of the folks that didn't get the money and they're in the most distressed neighborhoods, I'd like to see those folks be part of this solution and make sure that we're doing the outreach to those communities to make sure that they're here and that they're part of it. Otherwise, we get in a situation where we're kind of telling them what to do. So I want to hear their voices as well, and that often we get in these rooms, and I've been doing this a long time, and when we get in those rooms, Bob Miller will tell you, and Debbie and others, when this first blew up, we had a big, when RT and Sharon first ran against each other, we had a big a debate, and we facilitated that conversation, and promises were made. But I also want to make sure that as we're having these conversations, we're also making sure that we're bringing everybody in the room that's going to be affected. Otherwise, you end up with the same kind of polarization that we're having today. So I don't know if that was the right reaction, but that's kind of what I'm thinking.
All right, so I do want to hear from 2 more people, Representative Kahn, and then we've also been joined by State Representative Green, who will get your chance to get your reaction.
Okay, I don't have very much to add from that my colleagues have said. One of the directions I think we need to do is we need to be pointing out some of the really concrete things that NRP has done that will impress our colleagues. As we drove here, and I was too wimpy after coming home from our meeting yesterday to drive out myself, so Carol and Brad picked me up, and so Carol gave me a fast tutorial of this house. Look at this incredibly beautiful set of houses in this neighborhood, done with NRP funding. Look at what it's returned on that investment. I don't know if Justin's here. I can't. But yeah, there you are, from Como. I mean, one of the things which the legislature ought to look at is the neighborhood partnership that he's managed to negotiate. That that stopped the confrontation between the neighborhood and an environmental group to the benefit of both of those. And these are the stories that need to come out and need to get to the legislature. So they just don't think it's kind of a pie that the city has and no one else has. But we clearly, I'm going to have to be the only thing that we now have, we need to be very careful about how we proceed in the legislature. And any division on the Minneapolis scene is going to be used by our enemies, who are frankly in control. So we yet don't know. I don't know about the Senate. I know none of us know what committees are on in the House. I don't even think we know. You do? Oh, okay. Which is Friday was released. Okay. Well, we don't have. So House members don't. I don't even think we know the majority members on those committees yet. And I've worked with Greg Davids when he was in the majority before, and he's kind of, for a Republican in a rural district, he's kind of a populist. We passed one of the most incredible, one of the first bills in the country outlawing genetic discrimination in employment, which was, him writing the bill and him taking it through his committee and just beating people down on the House floor when they tried to say we shouldn't get into this. So, that committee might be more helpful to us than